to the Technesthetic Podcast. What's going on?
What's going on?
We're here.
We're here.
Finally, dude.
Little late,
we skipped
little
like
late,
how many weeks, I feel like, dude?
2, 3?
I don't know. It's been a couple weeks. Been kind of slow, been kind of busy.
We're always slow, but you know.
But yeah, we're here. We're going to talk some tech. We're going to talk some cool stuff today, I think.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting kind of off the cuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a little off the cuff.
I mean, we're always
as far as tech news goes.
You know?
There's not really like any kind of significant stuff going on. Like I've been watching and reading the tech news and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, no new releases, nothing major. There's like an ROG phone that like I saw reviews, and I'm just like, I don't care.
Well, we made some predictions. I don't think we talked about like the M2 stuff.
Oh no, not really. Well, we got into like we went over what happened at WWDC,
right?
Yeah,
but now people have M2 in their hands.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't watched anything like really about people's kind of impressions. I see a lot of videos out about why does this exist for like the MacBook Pro?
Sure.
Like
so I can give like a quick. Like, give me like 2 minutes, okay? Because I just want to cover some things. So if you're in the market for an M2 laptop, wait for the Airs. Don't buy the Pros. This is like the super Cliff Note version, okay? So wait for the M2 Air. Don't buy the same chassis Touch Bar 13 Pro. Avoid the 256 gigabyte model. And the reason for that is because it only uses half the PCIe lanes, and Apple Silicon like relies heavily on like swap. So it's significantly less performant in nearly every task across the board.
Wow. So
the 256 version shouldn't exist at all. Avoid that one like the plague. It does run hotter. The battery life is slightly worse, but the performance is pretty damn good. Pretty much what you would expect to see. It's a solid upgrade. Avoid the 13 Pro and avoid the 256 gigabyte storage option, and that's pretty much the important stuff, I think. So,
yeah, I'll say one thing though, the M1 was already really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I don't know, man. Like, I think some people would just be better off to stay with the M1.
Yeah, if you already have an M1, like this isn't like something that like you need to upgrade to. But like if you were on the fence and you were like saying I'm going to get another year out of my laptop and you were looking for something, the pre-order for the new Airs go live in 2 days. So what is that, Friday? They go live Friday and they'll ship on July 15th. So you have 4 color options. You have Starlight, Midnight, Space Gray, and Silver. Avoid the 256 gigabyte option and you should be good to go. I kind of like that Midnight color. It's kind of different. It's kind of unique. It looks kind of cool.
If I was buying one, it would be the Midnight for sure.
Same. Because it's different.
It does look
it's
good.
Unique. You're right.
Yeah.
And like the M2 performance it crushes even the M1 Max and the M1 Ultra in single core. Obviously, right? Because it's newer architecture. But it's still a little behind in multi-core, but it's way better than the M1, especially in graphics. Graphics got a huge bump.
Yeah.
Huge bump.
I wonder, does it? Okay, so it does get hotter. So does it?
Get hotter. It does throttle, but it only throttles when you're using like stupid workloads, like workloads you would never use, like something that literally pegs the CPU and pegs the GPU.
Okay.
So like Max Tech, I think, got it to throttle by running Cinebench R23 and running GFX Bench at the same time. So like that's something that like you would never do, right?
I wonder if I'm like doing a Blender render if it's gonna throttle. Right?
Probably not. And the only reason I say that is because I think when like the same application is making like interrupts, like calls to the SoC, I think by default like Apple will like throttle the CPU and be like, all right, we'll give them 50% CPU because they're only going to save like 10 seconds. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've noticed Apple Silicon does that very well with like the scheduler. The other thing I thought was interesting is the TJ Maxx on the M2 is 105C. So like,
okay,
typically
so it's really gonna allow you to get hotter.
Yeah, so like typically we're used to like things like pegging around like 99.
Right.
The TJ Max for the M2 appears to be 105 is what people are discovering. So like the M2 under that crazy circumstance of running 2 benchmarks at once did hit 105C. So
okay, well, there's no fan or anything, so
no, yeah,
it's just the way it is. But
yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, like, the Air is still awesome.
No, it's great.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, unless you have a sustained load of like significant, like unique sustained load, then you're gonna be like just fine with it.
Yeah, and
you know, it could even do video editing and stuff just fine, especially because a lot of that's accelerated now with the media engine and things like that. Like, it's not gonna max out your whole chip.
Sure.
You're gonna be fine.
What I thought was interesting was like, I don't know if you're familiar with like that speedometer test, where that basically goes over like running different web scripts and stuff.
Yes.
To like kind of determine how fast your experience will be doing like normal browsing, so on and so forth. The M2 scored double what my 12900K desktop gets with DDR5.
Dang.
Double.
Serious?
Yeah, it's insane. It doesn't even make sense.
I mean, that's really amazing. I mean, that's what Apple can really do with this custom architecture, is whatever they want. Like, I know we have an ARM baseline with, like, you know, but like the fact that they have complete control over the hardware and the software, like they can do kind of cool shit. Like, like they designed the chip, right? So the SoC is what makes this magic happen, really. And so I don't know, it's awesome. I think that we're behind in aspects on the PC as far as innovation goes.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You know, it's kind of like the conversation we had the other day where, like, you know, Windows needs to kind of get out of their Qualcomm deal so they can have, you know, other third-party SoC manufacturers make ARM chips that can run Windows.
Yeah, I really think that if we get like NVIDIA in the game, like making ARM chips, Windows ARM chips, man, like we might actually be able to have like a good desktop ARM experience.
I think so too.
But like Microsoft's going to have to follow suit with like really good ARM software, because like right now what they have is just not enough.
It doesn't cut it.
It doesn't cut it. They're not competing with Rosetta 2, which is really what you're going to need, because nobody's going to want to lose all their x86 applications. It's like when they had the Microsoft Surface tablets that came with like their student edition of Windows. Like,
well, it's interesting you bring that up, because the Surface Pro X still exists, right?
Yeah.
And like it just got refreshed. It just got refreshed with new hardware, and like it's still so poor that like it was like it like fizzled out before it even released.
Right, because it can run. Can't it run x86 applications just badly?
Just poorly.
Yeah.
It even runs some ARM apps poorly. Yeah. So.
And I think that's really just because like what Apple's done is they designed the Apple Silicon chips with Rosetta 2 in mind. So they knew they were going to have to do this compatibility layer. So there's a hardware component built in to facilitate that translation layer. Whereas like you get a Qualcomm chip and it doesn't give a fuck about x86.
Yeah, but like Qualcomm made that chip for Microsoft, right? So like it's interesting because you would assume that Microsoft would be like, listen, we have a lot of legacy applications that will not get an update and they need to run, you know?
Right.
You would think that would have been a requirement to make the device, you know, somewhat performant. But
it'd have to be like a pretty deep collaborative effort, right? Because it's a hardware and a software problem. So, and the fact that Apple controls both of those, they can really, you know, design their hardware with their software in mind. Whereas like Qualcomm is a little less cognizant of Microsoft and how they want to do things, and vice versa. So, you know, there's like that disconnect, and they haven't been able to bridge that gap yet. Right. And that's what they really need to do, because until we get a Rosetta 2 equivalent for the PC, we're not going to really want to go to ARM. Nobody's going to suddenly drop all their x86 applications and start developing for ARM. It's just not going to happen. You know, developers aren't just going to flip a switch and then just be on. It's just not how it works. Unfortunately, it's just not how it works. It's not easy. Like software development, as we know, because we've been looking into it lately, as you know, as that's kind of where we're trying to go. It's like very difficult, and developers just aren't going to go on like that. You know, I mean, there are some that are doing it, but like even to this day, on the Mac, you know, there's still a lot of applications that aren't Apple Silicon supported. They're just back
but they
compatibility.
Run great. They run great
through Rosetta 2. I mean, they do run great. In fact, they run really well, impressively well. But they would run that much better if they were compiled for ARM.
Sure,
they're just developers. It's a very difficult thing to do, and they're not doing that. So that's kind of like the stopgap.
My video feed is going through OBS, and OBS is going through Rosetta 2.
Oh, so. Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, Rosetta 2, like, I haven't had a single issue with it. It's like literally magic. You don't even think about it. And like, that's the best case scenario. Like, Microsoft really needs that. So, I mean, because I would love to see the ARM efficiencies come to desktop.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I mean, just because like I'm desperate for more single core performance. Like really need single core. Like, yeah, our CPUs are getting more and more cores and threads, but we aren't getting enough single core leaps, in my opinion.
I think we're hitting that single core wall though, right?
Maybe. I mean, that might be the case. And if it is, I mean, that's a shame because like the way
let me rephrase. I think we're hitting the single core wall on x86.
That might be the case. I mean, I don't think we've hit a wall just yet. Like things are getting smaller and smaller still, but like you're absolutely right. For just the way the architecture is designed, it's like for some reason we just can't innovate in the single core department. It's just like impossible, I suppose. And it's a shame. I mean, a lot of things can be threaded, but like most of the time games can't be threaded easily. Like I'm doing a lot of research on how to design because, you and I are getting into game dev a little bit. Spoiler alert.
Ground floor, like literally like learning CS50, like not even.
Yeah, like I'm learning C and like basic programming knowledge, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. But really, I'm trying to design a game that's optimized in any way I possibly can. That means having multi-thread support,
no textures,
using things like culling and other techniques to basically optimize a game to run as fast as possible on potato hardware. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to be efficient. And, I watched an excellent video yesterday about like how software is actually getting worse as far as efficiency go because hardware is advancing so quickly that software engineers have to be optimal less and less, and they're forgetting the techniques that old software engineers like the old guard had to use to be able to make fast code.
That's a good point, dude. That's a really good point.
It's like we're losing knowledge actually because the old guard that designed really good low-level software, everything's like at a high-level programming language now. You don't know what's working under the hood. You don't know how to be optimal. It's really something I want to avoid if possible. I don't want to fall into that trap of just designing a program that is shit under the hood. Like sometimes you'll get developers that are god tier, like the Factorio devs. They're amazing because like their game can do a shit ton.
Okay.
Like with one CPU cycle. It's not even a multi-core game. Like the amount that they can do.
Why is that? Why can't they make it a multi-core game?
They can, but it's difficult. Like it is very difficult to do. There's one person that modified Factorio on Reddit to make it multi-core as sort of a proof of concept, and apparently it worked pretty well. So
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because like the ultimate death of a lot of Factorio runs is once your base gets too big, you basically lag out. And then like same thing with RimWorld. Once your game gets too big, you'll get to the point where you can't play the game anymore because you're lagging out. Same with like games like Dwarf Fortress. It's I don't know.
So would you say that Factorio is a pay-to-win game? Because if you have better hardware, you could get farther.
That's funny. Yeah, but basically, I mean, the better hardware you have, the further along you can push it.
Well, there you go.
Before it
pay-to-win Factorio, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just kind of fascinating, dude.
No, it's interesting stuff for sure. For sure, it's interesting.
I mean, should we talk about the game dev stuff now, or?
Yeah, let's dive right in. Why not?
Yeah, so
For all 16 of you out there who are interested.
Yeah, so game dev, dude. I mean, I'm interested to talk to the wall about game dev, dude. I've been looking at
it but that's
hard.
like how you are. Like you go off the deep end with things, right? And then you're deep in it.
It's kind of a rare thing though. Like it only happens every so often where I go like full commit, like I full send it, you know? And like it was like that when I built my arcade cabinet. I basically did nothing but build that thing for like a month and a half or something.
Sure.
And then like now I'm like that with game dev where I'm going like 100%. And like basically I don't know what happened. I was sitting there one day and then I was like, you know what?
You know what?
I'm going to make a fucking game, dude.
There you go.
I was like, I'm going to make the best game. You know?
That's how it happens.
Because like I was like, you know what? I'm mad because every day I would like, you know, be awake at night thinking, where the fuck's my perfect game at? You know? Where the fuck is it?
I like how these are the things that keep you up at night. Like some people are like, oh man, I'm stressed about having kids. I'm stressed about bills.
Oh, I am
you lie
stressed
awake
about
and they're
that
thinking,
shit.
when's someone going to make the game I want? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
dude.
totally a first world problem. And I get it, you know, and it's interesting because you came to me and you kind of, you know, brought the idea to me. And like, obviously, I think everyone at some point thinks of making a game, right? Like if you're a gamer, you obviously have your own ideas, you have your own experiences, and you want to create something.
Right.
That ultimately is your vision. But it's a large undertaking, right? So like it's one of those things that's like not many people do.
Right.
And it's I'll be honest, like it's going to take a lot, you know what I mean? It's going to be a huge commitment. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning, a lot of, well, this doesn't work. Right. And then you have to reach those hard crossroads where it's like, what do we leave out?
Right.
Because it's just not feasible, you know?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny what you're talking about as far as like what do we leave out and stuff. Like what you should do in game design is kind of best practice is work towards your like least like, well, when you're building a game, you kind of want to build towards a target, and that target should be like the least amount of stuff to be shippable, right? Like so what do you absolutely what's the core that you need to ship your game, and then work on that stuff. Don't spend too much time on like doing this crazy complicated shit. Work towards the least technically acceptable product, and then like once you get there, now you can start working on like the cool shit that you maybe like you don't necessarily need but you might want. That's when you can work on it. So like you kind of want to target like this baseline. And so like it's kind of an interesting thing because a lot of people will spend like maybe weeks or months on features that like they don't even end up implementing because of that, right?
Right.
So that's why it's like ideal that you don't waste any time in the beginning. You just kind of work on the core, you know? Mm-hmm. And another interesting thing is you don't just do that, but like when you make a game, I'm finding that it's best to like gray box kind of prototype your game. So like you don't worry about crazy art assets. You don't worry. If you want to, you can, but like it's ideal if you just stick with like boxes, gray box, right? And you just kind of like, you know, you build a player controller. So like if it's a first person game, you got like maybe you got a cylinder that's like the player character and you get it to move around and stuff. Like you build the player controller.
Basic, like basic shapes.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can kind of work in the mechanics around movement. Maybe you want to have a gun so you can model in like a little play gun. And just once you get the systems in place, you can always swap out the assets with like final products or like refine animations and stuff. But you need those baseline kind of, I guess, mechanics in place to kind of get the ball rolling, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the prototype stage is where you kind of just get some mechanics down and get started, you know, with the basics, and then you just build up from there. So it's kind of interesting. I was doing a ton of research on like the best ways to go about like looking at game design and like what's optimal, because you know a lot of early game devs like waste a lot of time. And they get stuck. There's these walls they hit, and then they get discouraged and stuff like that. And I want to avoid all that, right? Like I want to try and like avoid being frustrated, because that's what's going to make me stop.
I think that there is going to be a certain level of frustration that comes.
Yeah, but it's like I have to be able to work through that, right? Like I want to have enough accomplishments behind me to push me through those moments of frustration.
Sure.
So
no, that makes sense.
You start small, right? So like what we've been doing is like doing research. Okay, well, let me take this course CS50 and learn about programming. Let me go through the tutorials on the game engine we want to use, which is Godot, and I'll talk more about that. But ultimately, we had to pick between a game engine, Unreal, Unity, and Godot. I went with Godot because it's free and open source, and it's kind of like the new hotness that's coming out. A lot of excitement behind it. I was like, yeah, let me get behind that and see if I can learn it. Sure. And I'm impressed enough with the products people are putting out with it that I think that, you know, if they can put out something of that quality, I mean, I'll be lucky to be able to hit some of the quality that I've seen people do with Godot. So I'm like, that's not going to bottleneck me. I'm just going to work with that. And then, but yeah, I think that, you know, once I walk the walk and do the tutorials, make the basic game, you know what I mean? Get a little bit of a framework under my belt, then I can kind of be a creative a little bit. Maybe I work in throughout all those tutorials, I've learned how to do various things, and I can combine them together and make like my own little games. And then once I got the experience of making those little games, then I can make a more ambitious game and just keep going from there, right? Like that's like the path.
Right.
So I don't know, man. That's kind of the goal right now. I'm glad to have you on board.
No, I get it.
But like, you know, what do you think about the whole thing?
I think it's gonna be a challenge, right? Like, I don't know what your like time frame is, but like I see this, you know, this not being like a 2022 project. I look at this as being like a 3-year project. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, you're right. That's realistic. So like people always say like double, triple the amount of time you think it's going to take. And that's probably realistic because like we're like in the early phases, stages where we need to like do so much learning and like so much doing. Yeah, we need to actually be doing the coding and writing the scripts and like getting into the editor and putting stuff down and like, you know, figuring out mechanics and like how to code for those mechanics.
Sure.
And building a workflow. This is going to be the biggest thing. So obviously I have this dream game I want to make, but I can't just start there. Everyone says don't start with your dream game because you'll be disappointed. You'll
it's too ambitious.
You'll hit a wall. It's too ambitious. Yeah, people. It's the scope is too high, right? Like obviously, so just for the podcast sake, I'll say I want to make like an open world Skyrim like game, and to make a game like that, like that's a lot. The scope is big for a team of maybe 2. You know what I'm saying? So that's a lot to do. So understanding the scope is so big, that's why I got to start small, work my way up, and then maybe once I get like a little bit of a perspective on like how realistic that is to be able to make a game like that, then I can kind of rein myself in and be like, okay, well, let's adjust the scope a little bit. Maybe I make a game has some compromises, but kind of hits the target that I wanted, you know, maybe just scaled down a little bit and then go from there, you know? So that's kind of like my path to success, which is success being like, I've released my games.
I think we need to,
I'm happy.
I think we need to like smaller milestones. You know what I mean? Like, to be honest with you, like we probably shouldn't even like focus on like things for the game. You know what I mean?
Right. Like I have the dream game as kind of like a goal, but like I have smaller games I want to make just for like growth purposes, right? Like I don't even know if I'll release them. I don't know if they're going to be, but like everyone says you should always just kind of work on kind of learning games, right? Like games that are designed to hone your skills, right? It's really just getting in there, making something, practicing.
So by learning games, you mean games for you to learn, not games for the player to learn.
Correct. So it's really about your education, honing your skills in the editor, learning how to write code and the scripts and everything like that. So it's really going to be interesting to see, you know, how well I adapt to it, because it's alien to me, but also not. You know, you and I have written like code before, just, you know, in the course of our work. And so it's not alien to us. Like these concepts are not alien to us.
No,
so I
feel like it's not a foreign concept. It's like a different mindset, right? Like it's a different.
Right. But I still feel like we have a pretty good, I guess, starting position. Like I feel like we have the mind for code.
I feel like we're in a unique situation because we find learning fun. Like there are a large group of people out there who hate educational videos. Like my the majority of my YouTube is nonfiction stuff. It's
right.
It's educational in some facet, right? If it's
it doesn't matter what
related, if it's something, you know, technology related, if it's something coding related, if it's science or space, or even like learning about the latest like hardware technologies and stuff that comes out and learning how those things work. That's where I gather my enjoyment from, really, is knowledge, you know. So like I feel like you and I are unique in that aspect, whereas people would view this as like something they have to do or whatever. It's something that I want to do because I like learning, you know. Honestly,
that's the biggest thing. You said it perfectly. We're unique in the fact that we want to learn this stuff, like we like to, right? Like that's so. And it's honestly, right? It's like, super unique. Like, you know how many like IT people that I've talked to that like, they don't like their job, dude.
No.
Like they don't like IT. They don't like computers.
Right.
They just do it, but they don't like it. And I get that, man. Like I don't like computers sometimes too, but like I do like computers. I go to work, I work on computers, I come home, I have my own servers I'm running. I don't
dislike computers. I dislike when humans interact with them.
Yeah, because they don't know what they're doing. I don't like the help desk aspect of IT. Right. But like, thankfully, that's minimal for me. Like, it's when you're interacting with people. To me, that's different than working on computers. Right.
No, I get it.
But like,
yeah, man. I mean, it's exciting stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a journey that we're gonna go down together.
Yeah.
You know, win, lose, whatever.
We'll see what happens. Either way, like, we're going to come out the other end smarter than we were when we started, right?
Something will be gained here.
Like, either way, you know, it was crazy. I'm watching, there's a Harvard University lectures called CS50 on YouTube. You can also, there's like an app for the Apple TV where they're at on there too. And, yeah, they're even in HDR. What the hell? Like the 2021 ones on YouTube. I'm like, what the hell?
Crazy.
There's not really much benefit because this dude's sweating and like the specular lighting on his sweat is just like HDR bright, you know?
HDR sweat,
if you want to get some HDR sweat, then yeah, watch it in HDR. Otherwise, the 2021, he's not sweating. So yeah, I'm going through these courses and it's teaching you basic C, like just C. And how to program it and like what an array is, what functions are, what integers, strings, all this stuff. It's teaching you the fundamentals, which is really good. And you know, it taught, I was watching lecture 3, it went over like the debugger and how a debugger works. And it was wild. So I was taking some training courses for work and they're web-based courses, right? They're like PowerPoint slides. You click next, whatever. A lot of times you can scum through these courses and just hit next, 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 and then get the certificate. But on this one, you couldn't. So I hit F12, which is the Firefox
wait, hold on,
inspector, right?
Is this the first time you've used like inspect element and stuff?
I mean, no, but like a lot of the stuff in here is like alien to me a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Right? But like after seeing the CS50 course, it's a lot less so. Like I was like, oh shit, like I can click on debugger and then I can like use this stuff to see like what scripts are running and what's happening. And you can like have breakpoints and stuff. I'm like, what is all this shit? Like I had no idea before, but the course is teaching me stuff. And now I'm looking at things that I've looked at many times before with new eyes. And I'm like, dang, like, okay. I understand what this is a little bit better than I did before, you know, like I'm actually getting stuff out of CS50. I mean, more of the story, I couldn't skip that course and get to the certificate, but, you know, it was worth trying.
Gotta give it hell, you know?
Yeah, so it's just, I think it's really going to be worthwhile no matter what. I'm very excited, though, to make some games, dude.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I want to make some,
it'll be a fun project for sure.
We should, what I want to do is like collaborate on smaller games, maybe. You know, like we can practice the workflow, which is going to be like
we have to be doing it together, or else you know, one of us is going to fall off the wagon.
What's our start game going to be like? What's the first like little game? Like it's got to be easy, right? Like I know I wanted to make an Among Us clone because
that still sounds ambitious to me. I'm thinking more like tic-tac-toe.
Oh, well, that's super easy, dude. But yeah, we can start off with some Pong or some shit. You know what I'm saying? Like that's easy stuff.
It's easy, but like, then we can keep adding on features, like a score tracker.
Yeah.
You know, player entry. You know what I mean? For like high score and stuff like that to try to see how those things work out. You know, like there could be a lot there.
Well, yeah, but like I'm gonna be doing those like on my own time. Like I don't feel like we need to collaborate on tic-tac-toe.
That's fair. That's fair.
Whereas like if we get into like something a little bit bigger, it's like we can divide and conquer on it a little bit. So it's like, okay, well we need to work out like, you know, a player movement system. Or like, and you know, there's a lot of Godot stuff with multiplayer. So like we can go through the tutorials for that, learn how multiplayer works, and and then figure out like a character customization framework.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun.
That stuff.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, because I don't know, I have fun playing Among Us, but I was like,
Among Us.
But yeah, I was like, I should just make my own because I want to make a multiplayer game because I think it'd be fun to play with my bros.
Sure.
Like get the friend group together, be like, all right, everybody, we're playing my game. Let's go, you know?
Right.
And then, and just add some funny shit to it, you know? And then
it'll be cool.
I think it'd be kind of fun to make like a multiplayer game because like ultimately my dream game is the goal. So I'm always going to be trying to obtain knowledge that will help me create the dream game.
The dream game, dude.
Right?
That's the name of it, the dream game.
It's basic, well, right now, because it has no name, but I want to make like a Skyrim-like game. Like, I want an open world Skyrim-like game that's better than Skyrim in my ways, in ways that I think matter.
That's fair. Which is interesting, because I think that like we have a lot of the same views on that just based off of
our discussions.
Yeah,
so like obviously the scope of the game is going to change, but like I want to have reasons for exploration. There was an excellent YouTube video I watched recently about like why open worlds can be good or bad, and it was pretty insightful. And like one of the worst things you can do is make an open world where there's like no reason to explore.
Well, like the problem I have with like open world games, I think Borderlands is a really good example. And like I keep like playing with my eyes in case anyone's watching and is like, what the hell is he doing? My allergies are like terrible today.
Oh, so it's all good.
They're like constantly tearing.
It sucks.
But anyway, so like I was playing through Borderlands 3 for a little bit with my buddy Paul, and like that's kind of like an open world-esque game.
Right.
But realistically, I feel like the open world kind of just adds nuance in a bad way, because like you're basically running around doing fetch quests in the open world, and then you have to travel between these large areas, and there's no reason for me to, oh, what's over there? Oh, what's this? Yeah. Oh, what's behind this door? There's no reason for me to do that. You know, it's just go to where the mini map tells me to do.
What you're talking about,
you could just teleport me there. You know what I mean? It's like it's just there to like, I don't know.
What you're talking about there is basically a linear game in an open world.
Right.
And
like, and it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. But that's like in that video that I was talking about, that was one of the things that they highlighted as the biggest flaws with most open world games is they end up being linear because like, for example, they talked about like Fallout. In the Fallout games, you got to find like your family member or whatever. Like Fallout 4 was like your daughter or some shit. So a lot of players would be like, okay, well, that's pretty important. I'm going to go do that, you know, and then they will do basically, and at that point it's basically a linear situation because they're just following the main story all the way to the end, and the open world doesn't really play into that picture very well. You know, one of the things they said was a good example was like Breath of the Wild, where, and that's a good version of an open world game because they're like, all right, you got to go kill Ganon, and then like you can go and do that if you want, right, as soon as you start the game, but like you're gonna die. So they incentivize like go explore the world, get stronger, get more shit.
What's probably one of my favorite examples of an open world game?
What's that?
Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves is pretty good.
I love Sea of Thieves. And
because the open world's like the point of Sea of Thieves.
Right, but it's done really well because like I don't know how much Sea of Thieves you played, right? But like,
well, we played it together a little bit, right?
Yeah, but like, I mean, I play it weekly.
Yeah,
and
well, I'd say it's safe to say you've played probably more than me by now, but I have played, you know, a bit.
So you know, to kind of put things into perspective, it's usually me and my two boys who aren't in the area anymore. It's like Sea of Thieves is kind of our way to kind of still keep in touch with one another.
Right.
And we always set out with like a mission, right? Like we'll text each other and like we usually sail on like Wednesday nights after podcast, or maybe sometimes Sunday, usually Wednesday nights after podcast. But it's like, oh, let's do some Order of Souls voyages. And what we set out to do is rarely what we end up doing, because something along the way always just makes our plans go cattywampus. You know what I mean? For the good or the bad. And that's kind of what makes Sea of Thieves so engaging, is that, you know, to your point in Fallout, you know, like there should be something in that game where when you go to find your wife or your family member or whatever, that should be your goal. But things along the way should distract you from that goal for better or worse.
Right. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And that's another thing, is like the world needs to interact with you as you're going. Right.
So it's like, I set out to do this, and shoot, I didn't get to get that done yesterday because some bandit stole my coin purse. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it could be many things. It could be like a bandit that will show up along your way. It could be that there's something in the environment, like survival elements you have to think about. Maybe you have to, maybe, you know, you have, they talked about Death Stranding being an example where like the environment, well, the terrain's something you have to overcome, but like the rain and stuff that causes like some shit. Yeah, you have to fucking like take cover. There's other things that show up you gotta fucking deal with.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's super cool concepts, and not a lot of games do that. A lot of games feel lazy. Like I feel like games like most games these days have like a really decent art team, and that's kind of what carries the game. So like, you know, going back to Borderlands is basically like 30 maps that were designed.
Right.
And then you just run from point A to point B within that map. Like that seems pretty generic to me.
It is. And, you know, I mean, part of the big thing with Borderlands is its art style, right? Like, but like so many games, like I think you touch on a great point, which is many games are carried by like a good art direction, or like maybe they have like a AAA budget where they can have the AAA graphics. Whereas like the gameplay suffers. Like there's so many good examples of how like modern games have like regressed. Like for example, like GTA 4 versus GTA 5. Like GTA 5 looks better, but like guess what, dude? In GTA 4, like if you hit a dude with your car, like the ragdoll was way better than in GTA 5. Like if you like beat on your car, there's like deformation that happens, whereas it's like very generic texture shit on GTA 5. Like the technologies, this is where I want to focus my game. I want there to be like more of the first and not the second. I want to have more of those interesting mechanics versus AAA graphics but no substance, right? Yeah. So that's where I want to focus. Like so many of my favorite games are like those weird indie games that just nail mechanics, right? Just have really solid frameworks, and that makes the game fun and sell.
It does, because that's because you engage with the mechanics, right? Like that's kind of the point of playing a game, is to engage with the game.
Right.
I wanted to get your take, since it's kind of in the same vein, on like when devs get core functionality wrong. I think a good example of this recently would probably be Halo Infinite.
Oh my God, that's the best example. Like, Halo Infinite is such a disappointment. Yeah,
like, so in your opinion, you know, because you talked about prioritizing a core, what do you think their core was?
For Halo Infinite? You know, I think Halo Infinite, it has an identity crisis, because it tries to be a Halo game, but then it throws away all the core concepts of what Halo was.
Sure.
And says, no, we're going to do something completely different. We're going to transition to open world, right?
Which, so, to be fair, I did enjoy the campaign in Halo Infinite. I did.
Right, but like they had to cut a lot of content. Like there's a whole like island in the game that we don't even go to.
Oh yeah, like the Northeast Island or whatever.
That was all cut content
over there.
Right? Yeah, that was all cut content, and like
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's wild to me, because like they worked on this game an extra year, and we still have cut content. You know what I mean? So that's just goes to show. Like, I mean,
what bothers me is I don't know how like big of a Halo fan you are currently. Like,
well, I guess I'm still a Halo fan.
I am too. Like I still read the subreddits and stuff just because I love Halo. But There was an article the other day that Halo Infinite apparently has a pretty bad melee desync bug. Like pretty bad in the multiplayer. And then like some disgruntled 343 employee said it's probably never going to get fixed because the department who was doing netcode for Halo Infinite has already been reassigned to another game.
Yep. Isn't that such a disappointment? I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like, this is the problem with AAA studios, as big as Microsoft and stuff, right? Like, the problem is they're money makers, right? So they're designed to make money. That means that they're always shifting resources around, right? Like,
sure.
Like, if as soon as your game ships, you go skeleton crew on it, basically. That's what happens.
Right.
You keep enough people around to maintain the game, but everyone else shifts to different projects. That's Halo Infinite's no different. And that's the problem.
It's unfortunate.
And I mean, so many games we've seen released lately, not just Halo Infinite, but like other games. Like we saw Cyberpunk, then we saw like the Battlefield game. That was like
2042 is a big letdown too. But you know what really bothers me about Infinite, and I can't wrap my head around it, is like Phil Spencer is such a like personal guy, and like he's so big on building the Xbox brand and building Microsoft's brand, and we're talking about Microsoft here,
right?
Who probably, you know, could afford anything. Like they bought like what, 80 studios. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but like you would think that for their Halo, no pun intended, their Halo product, they'd be like, listen, if this is a cost center for us, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? We're gonna deliver the best game on Xbox.
That's what's like, so confusing. And here's another thing that's
confusing.
confusing to me, right? Like, why reassign people on for Halo Infinite when Halo Infinite's supposed to be your like continuing like, Halo game?
Exactly right. And like if you've read like the developer blogs and stuff, is it's good developers plagued by bad management. Yeah. Like they apparently have this policy where you could only work on Infinite for a maximum of 18 months before you had to go somewhere else.
Why?
And then they would get a new talent. I have no idea.
That's so backwards.
That's so weird. Yeah, that's so weird.
I'll tell you from experience, right? That is terrible. And not developer experience specifically, but like in the Navy, right? There's a seashore rotation, so people are always moving in and out, right? So the problem with that is it takes several years for you to learn a system. In our case, it was like how our servers work, how our infrastructure is put together, how our networking is, like our IP structures, all this stuff, all these things combined is like learning the system. It takes years before you're proficient. And then like once you finally feel like you're cozy, you got to move to another command and new people come in, right? Like there's this constant rotation. And so you're always having to train these newbies that know very little. And as a result, they cannot do that much. Like their productivity levels are very low because they're in this learning phase. And then you have the old guard where they're finally at their max productivity. They have to go somewhere else. Same thing.
No, that makes sense.
That's like Microsoft, right? If they have this policy where people are constantly rotating, I mean, if they don't have a good justification for that, that's really a shame because like once you're these teams, you know, I know that they probably want to prevent having single points of failure. This is probably something that they're trying to do. We don't want to have any single points of failure.
You mostly see that in like accounting departments where things can get audited. You know what I mean? Like you don't really see that in like, I don't know.
I'm not sure what it is. I think it's because the money-making machine needs no bottlenecks. And if it's a couple people that are God tier, like, and your entire project rests on the shoulders of those people, that's dangerous, right?
Someone said on Reddit, and I thought it was interesting because like it's like maybe that is the reason. He said that the only reason they rotate out employees is so they can keep hiring entry-level developers and pay them entry-level wages.
Dude, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised because that's the environment we live in right now. Yeah, it's like even in our field, like I see it where companies will hire on IT people. And they want to hire them on for cheap, dude. Like, in my field, it's IT people, right? Straight out of the military. They've got the training from being active duty, so they want to pick them up for like dirt cheap. Like, and they'll take the jobs too because they're fresh out of the military. It's like being fresh out of school, right? Same thing. So like they'll pick up these guys for cheap, but like they'll suck, you know? And like, but they don't care because you know, whatever.
Yeah, they're paying them for nothing. They check the box. They have an IT guy. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting too, because like you know, 343 prior to Halo Infinite coming out was showing off the engine they made for it, Slipspace.
Yeah,
and
it
they
looks
were talking
way
about,
different.
And they were talking about how, you know, it allows them to do, you know, have more technical liberties, have more creative liberties, have more armor customizations, and it's literally worse than Halo 3 in every way.
Yeah, no, you're right. Isn't it funny because you can see people like compare the two? Like it's obvious. Like how this, it seems like this is a trend now because like it seems like you see, there's always like there's tons of games. Well, yeah, a big promise that under delivers every time, right? Like that's why we don't pre-order games anymore. That's why like everyone says don't pre-order games, because that's the environment we live in now. You can't trust development to turn out the way you want it to. It could be a bad publisher. It could be development hell. Who knows what it is?
I think part of the problem, you know, to be honest with you, I think part of the problem is that games don't make money anymore. And like, I say that from like maybe a realm of, you know, just being jaded. I don't know what it is, but let me give you a good example. Okay. So, Diablo Immortal is making over $1 million a day. And it's a terrible game. It's a terrible game that Blizzard outsourced to NetEase, which is like a Chinese or Korean company that literally specializes in making games be addictive to spend money on. That's literally what they have focus groups on what's called the wedge technique. So you sell someone on something that's like 99 cents, and then you sell them on something that's $1.99, and then you sell them on something that's $2.99, and then you keep driving that wedge in there until they become whales. So now you have this developer like Blizzard, you know, who goes to make a game, and their most profitable game is I don't even want to call them a game development company. They're more of a psychological company. Right. That's now their most profitable product. And then we see games that they know aren't going to make money in that regard, like Warcraft 3 Reforged gets like 3 people on it and the game is trash because they had 3 people on it. But so like, you know, I think it's going to be really hard for games to like be successful now, because look at like Apex Legends or League of Legends or basically any game that ends in Legends is just a cash cow.
Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah, Raid Shadow Legends. Like I joke about it all the time because like my friends love League of Legends, and like there was a time when I liked League too, but like League was like the first game that ruined gaming. Because like League was the first game where it's like, oh, let's put out a $35 Sona skin. Yeah, and I bought it. Everyone and their mother, including myself and including you, said, yes, that's okay. I'll pay the cost for one art asset in a game, the cost of a full game. And now everyone does it. We have battle passes, we have loot boxes, we have skins, we have weapon skins, we have emotes, we have banners, basically any level of customization that you use to unlock in a game. Now we're trying to have NFTs too. And like the cost ratio for this is literally more than the cost of the game.
I know.
So
we live in a free-to-play economy now, dude.
They make business models. Everything is awful, man. Everything is awful. Like I bought Apex Legends when it came out, like the first pack for like $30 or whatever. Now I have to spend $30 again to get more champions. Like what the hell? Like. What happened to just, I don't know. I know what you mean. I'm just frustrated.
No,
man.
listen.
It's frustrating.
I came from an era where when you bought a game, you got the whole thing.
Yeah, same.
Right? I come from an era where there wasn't even fucking patches for your game. All right, there was just fucking the game.
Yeah, man.
Okay, there was no like early access.
I'm playing Diablo 2, dude. It's like one of the last good games.
That's what I'm saying. Like the old guard knows and remembers that games don't have to be this way, right? The games used to have a lot more respect for their players, and nowadays it's just completely different. This is why I'm so like adamant about my son not playing those exploitive games, because I don't agree with them fundamentally. Right. I just think that we deserve better. We should expect better from our games. We shouldn't expect this bullshit. We shouldn't accept it at all. And like Diablo Immortal, Immortal is a perfect case study for why we're going in this direction. It's because the money's there, dude. People will pay it. That's the reality. And
Sure. Right.
It may not be the reality we want to hear. It's the sad truth. Is like people are paying for this shit. You know, and it's making so much money. And we all know it's about money, right? That's where I think indie will save us, because it's the one place where people are still making games out of passion and not for profit.
Right.
And that's really where I stand.
Diablo, just I got some numbers here.
Sure.
Diablo Immortal in the first 30 days made $49 million in microtransactions in 30 days.
That's insane amount of money. I mean, that's just ridiculous, right?
And what compounds this, dude, is streamers.
Streamers, yeah, like you saw the ones spending like $20K. You know,
I mean, a lot
stream.
of them have spent a lot of money, and people are donating money for them to buy into this stuff.
Yeah.
So they're buying it themselves, and then they're also giving other people money to do the same.
Yeah. It's really the mobile gaming market that is exploded, right? Like compared to like the normal video gaming market, the mobile gaming market is like the majority now in a significant way.
For sure.
And I'm just talking about money, right? Like in dollars that are in that fucking industry, the mobile gaming market is absolutely huge.
Massive.
And this is where these big companies they have their eyes set on it because it's where the money is. And it's a shame because AAA used to be about like making these big budget Xbox, PlayStation titles that everybody sort of acknowledged as being the gold standard, right? Like I know I'm a gamer, but I've always been a console gamer, a PC gamer, where the big games are, the AAAs, the ones that are
heavy
like
hitters,
the heavy hitters.
The complete experience.
Exactly. But like the problem is now, like it's so easy for companies to fall into these exploitive traps where they will make decisions based on profit. It's like when Shadow of War came out. You know that game? Middle-earth, Shadow of War.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I played, what was the one before that? Middle-earth,
Shadow of Mordor.
Shadow of Mordor. And that was like one of my favorite games.
Great
I
game.
loved that game.
Great
and I
game,
thought the systems they built in the game were very good. This is an example where you have a AAA game and then you have systems to back it up. They called it the Nemesis system, and it was so immersive.
Oh, is that like those like orc pawns would move?
Yes, and they had
awesome.
personalities, and they would follow you throughout, and like you would,
really cool.
you would get like rivalries between them, and like it was really cool. You really felt cool. Like they had personality, and they basically for Shadow of War took everything they did for Shadow of Mordor, scaled it up, but then they did scummy shit. They added like pay to cheat code stuff where you could do like boosts, and you know when they have boosts, that means that they nerf the amount of experience you get to incentivize. And dude, people said it was a snail's pace to level up in that game and to progress because they wanted you to spend fucking money. They ruined the game experience to incentivize that profit, right? Like to get you to spend. So it wasn't until like, I don't know, years later that they came back and patched out a lot of that shit, right? And made the game actually playable. But like it launched, and for a long time after that, it was a garbage game. And like so many games fall victim to this. It's insane. It pisses me off.
I can tell. I can tell you're heated.
It's ask Amanda, dude. I get on like a big thing about it whenever like Alex is going to play a game I don't like, and I'm like, I don't want him playing that. Like that game is shit.
Yeah.
Like I will just straight up be like, this is like one thing, dude. Like that game is shit. He can play a better game. There's like a million of them.
Pick one.
Pick the Nintendo Switch, dude. Nintendo, even though they charge $60 for life on every game they make,
dude. I agree.
At least their games are not filled with shit. You know,
I agree.
Apple Arcade filled with games that you can just play, no microtransactions, no ads. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's fucking respecting you.
Yeah.
What Microsoft is doing with Game Pass, pretty respectful. You know what I'm saying? So I
like Game Pass.
That's what I'm saying. So like, it's like you have these glimmers of hope that will save the gaming industry. Indie games are still there to save us. It's just the problem with indie games is like you don't get that many great ones. It's not like you got AAA gaming studios making indie games. It's just not how it works, right? Like you don't got indies making AAA type of games. It's just not how it works. So
yeah, we'll see.
We'll see, dude.
Yeah, so stay tuned on more for that. I guess we'll be chipping away at it slowly. Slow process.
It is, but
slow process.
Like it's a marathon, not a race. We just got to keep going.
Right.
I've been reading up on like how to make things into habit, right? And like you just have to, it's repetition. You just got to keep doing it. And for me, it's going to be like every day committing more and more time to game dev and learning and putting my hands on it and like getting in there, and like it has to become a habit because that's what it's going to need to be if I'm going to be serious about it. So
yeah, no, man, I get it. It's exciting times for sure. Because again, I've liked learning, and like it was one of those things that's like I've always wanted to be hyper proficient in a language. You know what I mean? And like this is a reason.
You know what the cool thing is? Once you get like good at like maybe one or two languages, like you can pretty much
learn the
flop.
others easier.
Yeah. Because like the concepts are really similar between them. The syntax changes. Yeah. And like, so like once you get good at programming in a couple languages, like we're going to be able to say like, yeah, we can do programming like legitimately.
Yeah, that's like my buddy who worked for Amazon, right? Like I think I told you this story, but like as part of his interview process, it was 7 or 8 interviews and 4 of them were technical. And then he had to solve problems in whichever language he chose, and he solved the problem and he said, here's the solution in 4 different languages.
Nice.
Because that's just how he is. But like to your point, like I guess he's got proficient in one, and then like he dabbled in the other ones enough that like to solve the problem he knew the syntax to do it in the others. So
yeah, and the crazy thing about programming is there's like multiple ways to solve the problem, and there's definitely better ways than others.
There's more efficient ways and more long ways. Yes, so that's basically how they graded him, right? Was like, what solution did you use to solve this? Not did you solve this? How did you get there? What was the most efficient? Which had the least overhead?
Yeah, it's like learning in what we're doing right now with CS50, how they talked about for loops and like how there's ways for you to do, like you could just copy and paste the same argument over and over, changing like the variable, but that's like not clean code. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So it works smarter.
Like, are you familiar with like for loops and if then statements and
storing
things in arrays and stuff?
Yeah.
I took a C++ class back in school, and I took a JavaScript class back in school. So, and plus I do a lot of like Boolean and Apex stuff for work. So I do those pretty frequently.
Nice.
So
then I look forward to seeing what you can code. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not that good, but like
you're gonna get good.
Base level.
I'm gonna drag you kicking and screaming.
Let's do it, dude. Let's do it
into the code, because I want to get you to program some of these systems in these games.
Do it.
And we're gonna have to get good at like documentation and all this shit. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild. But I want to make it fun. I want this to be what I do for fun, because like I don't have really too much time to play games anymore as a result. Like if I want to do this. So I want to make it.
The game is playing the game.
Yeah, basically, I want to get to the point where I do this for fun, and because that's the only way. Like with a 9-to-5 job, you can really get away with being an indie dev.
Yeah,
is if
it has to become your
exactly.
Leisure.
So that's the goal with it.
Yeah,
we'll
man.
See what happens, but yeah, man, we can wrap the podcast up unless you got more topics.
Just a few things. Just a few things to cover. Still going strong on the S22 Ultra. Didn't change my phone, guys, in case anyone's wondering.
Wait, yeah, this is the what phone are you using segment of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm still using the S22 Ultra. It's interesting because like there was a brief stint where like I don't like being in varied ecosystems. It just bugs me. It just irks me. And like I was considering switching to a Dell laptop because I wanted to, I just wanted to. It just bothers me when things don't work together. That's the best way I can put it. But I think you were right a long time ago, and it sucks because like it would be nice to have the iPhone integration and stuff. I think it's iPad, Mac, Android phone.
Yeah.
And like now with how my phone is set up, like my S22, I don't think I could ever currently not have an Android phone. And I say that, notice I said I would not get an iPhone. I said not have an Android phone. And my reason for saying that is because there are a lot of things that I now use my phone for that I couldn't do on an iPhone. And two of the things that like I've really gotten to the habit of is like if I'm you know, just recently, you know, I had to turn up some ports because I'm sure you know that like ports that aren't in use on a switch or router, you have them administratively disabled for security, so like someone can't plug into them. And then I just pulled out my phone and took a quick note of what ports I needed to open from the server room, and then I went back and did it. But just like that, like, you know, screen off note taking in my pocket is something that I've like kind of developed a habit of using. Yeah. And now it's something that I don't want to lose. You know? And the other thing is, we're a bit of a nerd, so we run Ubiquiti stuff at home. I know you do as well. Right. But we also run Ubiquiti stuff at work, and the management app can only be logged into one management account at a time on your phone. But on Android, I could just clone the app, and I have an orange colored one for work, and then I have the normal one for home. Yeah. So like if I had an iPhone, I would have to sign out and sign in every time I needed to manage a different network, and that would suck. Yeah. But on Android phone, I could just clone the app because it lets me install unsigned applications. So I could just change the build prop number and have two of the same app.
It's a beautiful thing, dude.
Yeah, like things like that are just hyper convenient. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
I think we're at the point now, and you know, I didn't believe it for a long time, but I think I do now, where Android is like good enough to where I can't complain. Right. I can't complain. Like I was like that for a long time where I was like, iOS is just better. The apps are just better. But like I'm at the point now where like everything's good enough. I was in that echo chamber
for a while time. Like, like there was a time where, I mean, I'm still like that in some ways, you know, like for example, Kelly stopped at the beer distributor to pick up some beer, and I said, oh, take a picture of the coolers and show me what's in the coolers. Well, because it was SMS, I couldn't read anything in those coolers, man. That picture was basically garbage.
I get it. That sucks. Yeah, because so there are things like that. Message, yeah.
But like on like the same token, you know, I recently picked up, I have the box here, the Sony XM4s, the earbuds, and they are Sony branded. You know, they're not Samsung or Google branded, but they have all of the same features that you would expect from AirPods on the Apple ecosystem. So you just open the case, the pairing window pops up. They automatically got added to Google Find My. You know, the Android 12 native Google widget that shows you the case battery and the left and the right percentage battery. That all works. It's all integrated. It's like literally like if this was like two Apple products talking to one another, but they're from different brands. Yeah. You know, Apple would never allow that.
No.
So
no, that's true. I mean, that's kind of the nice thing about Android is like it's not really a closed ecosystem. Yeah. And I mean, for a while, I didn't care about that. But like it's at the point now where there's like feature parity with what iOS has.
There is feature parity for sure.
Like almost in every way. So,
and like, I mean, just going to be totally honest. And like, if anyone disagrees with me, they could fight me. There is literally not a a laptop out there that will match what Apple's doing right now. I've looked. Ask Eric. I've been all over on this. I've looked constantly, and I just can't do it.
He was really close to getting the XPS 13 whatever plus.
13 plus, yeah.
And I mean, it looks beautiful. I gotta say, it does. It looks really nice. It's just not as good. It's just not as good. And like, you know, so really the Mac is still the way to go. And I want to get an iPad so I can sidecar it and be able to use my Apple Pencil with Blender.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So that I'm
definitely keeping the mini just because it's cool. But if that iPad comes out in the fall with an M2, I'll probably get the big one. And then I'll probably relegate the mini to being like a home control device for my friends come over to play music and stuff like that. That'll be like
it'll be perfect
home
for that
device. So
for sure. And I mean that's part of the reason I wanted the mini, but like the mini to me will be less usable than the big one, just because I already have like a fold.
For sure.
And the phones are big now too.
Yeah,
you know, so.
Yeah. If I still had the fold, the mini kind of does that same thing.
Yeah, so it's like, why would I pick up the mini when I have the fold already?
I would probably, I'd probably wait for the big boy M2 iPad.
Yeah, and that'll be the play because like right now I'm in the market for a new iPad, but I'm waiting. So like, yeah, if they come,
we know they're coming in the fall already because we know they get an annual update, and they purposefully missed this spring or March, whatever you want to call it, mid.
Do you think it's going to be like a basic refresh, just a new chip?
I don't actually. because there's rumors floating around that we may get a 14.1-inch iPad to compete with the S8 Ultra.
No way.
Yeah.
No way, dude.
Yeah.
That would be monstrous.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you've been following the leaks or not, but they're apparently ditching the Max nomenclature as well for their phones.
Well,
because they're getting rid of the Mini. So now they're saying it's going to be the iPhone 14 and the iPhone 14 Plus, and the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Plus.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah. But like now they're saying that we might get an iPad Pro Plus, which would be confusing because you have the iPad Pro 11, the iPad Pro 12, and the iPad Pro Plus 14.1 maybe. Who knows? Anyway, that's kind of what's floating around in the rumor mill now. We may see, you know, the XDR display trickle down to the 11, which would be cool. But I think I'd get the big one because Kelly has the big one, and it's so nice. It's so nice for like using like pen-based applications on it, which would be ideal, you know, honestly, for Sidecar.
Yeah, because I'm about to go pretty hard with like using the Apple Pencil for stuff. Like, it's just gonna be easier for like for game dev, note taking, and like kind of just putting ideas down.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be like perfect for that.
Well, what's cool about the 12.9-inch iPad, I'm sure you probably know this already, but they landed on that size because your canvas is roughly the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Right.
So it's literally like carrying around a sheet of paper, you know?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Smart
anyway,
move.
That's kind of what I wanted to just, you know, give a little tech update.
No, well, we needed one. You know, we haven't talked tech in a couple weeks or whatever,
yeah,
so, you know, it's about time, but we should wrap it up, dude.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. Anyway, this is the outro for the Technosthetic Podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming along, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, always appreciate it.
Check us out on YouTube. Give us like, subscribe, all that. Check us out on technosthetic.com where you can see where you can listen and watch us. You know, we're going to be on there. And yeah, check us out every other week
for game updates, right?
Yep. And we'll see you guys next time on the podcast.